The documentaries, fictional stories, and poems on this channel contain mature themes including psychological horror, violence, death, self-harm, mental health crises, and other disturbing subject matter. If you're sensitive to dark content, this may not be for you. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Hello, my unburdened ones. I am the Howlerist. Tonight we go somewhere science hasn't fully followed us yet. Somewhere ancient civilizations mapped in myth and modern researchers are only now beginning to chart in neurons and electromagnetic fields. Inside your chest, something is beating. You've never questioned it. Perhaps you should. If you like my darkness, why not join the pack? My mind is full of dark imaginings to share with you, and tonight's may be closer to the truth than you might want to know. What the Heart Remembers. Chapter 1. The Broken Heart. There is an organ beating inside your chest right now. You haven't thought about it today. You didn't need to. It has been working since before you were born, contracting, expanding, pushing blood through 60,000 miles of vessels without a single conscious instruction from you. Faithful, relentless, invisible, until it isn't. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death on this planet. Not in one country, not in one demographic. Everywhere, for everyone, regardless of gender, race, or wealth. It is the great equalizer. It rests quietly inside every human chest, responsible for more loss than any war, any plague, any disaster in recorded history. Right now, an estimated 64 million people worldwide are living with heart failure. Not the threat of it, not the risk of it, the reality of it. 64 million people whose hearts are losing a battle their bodies cannot win. 50% of them will be dead within 5 years. But here is what the statistics don't tell you. Heart failure is not one thing. It is not one enemy with a single face. It is a sentence handed down by many different judges. For some, it begins with dilated cardiomyopathy, a condition where the heart muscle stretches and thins like overstretched rubber until the chambers grow too large and too weak to push blood forward with any force. The heart becomes a failing pump in a flooding house. For others, it is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, where the muscle grows too thick, too rigid, crowding its own chambers, strangling its own function. The heart, in its desperation to be stronger, destroys itself. And then there are those born with it. Congenital heart disease, a fault in the architecture, a structural error written into the blueprint before the first breath was ever drawn. These people enter the world already compromised, already fighting. Most never know it until the day their body tells them without warning that the fight is almost over. But perhaps the most unsettling of all, viral myocarditis. An ordinary virus, the kind you might dismiss as a bad cold, a minor inconvenience. But in some people, in some bodies, that virus finds its way to the heart muscle and begins to consume it. Silently, methodically, without symptoms dramatic enough to raise alarm, until the damage is done, and what remains of a once healthy heart is scar tissue and memory. Any one of these conditions, along with many others, can end in the same place. End-stage heart failure. A heart so damaged, so exhausted, so beyond the reach of medication and intervention, that there is only one option left: someone else's heart. Chapter 2. The List. There is a list. You won't find it published anywhere you'd casually look. It doesn't make the news unless someone famous is on it. But it exists, maintained by a quiet network of medical organizations, updated in real time, every hour of every day. It is a list of people waiting for a chance to live. As of 2025, over 107,000 people in the United States alone are on the National Transplant waiting list. Approximately 3,900 of them are waiting specifically for a heart. Every 7.5 minutes, a new name is added to that list. Every single day, 16 people on that list die before a donor is found. And in 2025, for the first time in over 10 years, deceased organ donations actually fell. In a year that broke records for transplants performed, fewer people were donating. The gap between those who need and those who give quietly growing wider. Not because donors don't exist, not because the medical technology isn't there, but because the mathematics of death are brutally unforgiving. Only 3 in every 1,000 people die in circumstances that allow organ donation. Brain death on life support in a hospital with the right paperwork at the right time. The window is impossibly narrow. The demand is impossibly vast. The wait for a heart can be days. It can be months. It can be over a year. And while you wait, your heart continues to fail. The fluid builds. The breathing becomes harder. The legs swell. The world shrinks to the size of a hospital room and a telephone that hasn't rung yet. And then there's this. Perhaps the detail that should outrage every person who hears it. In the United States, up to 65% of available donor hearts are never used. Turned down by transplant centers exercising caution, deemed too risky, set aside, while somewhere on that list, someone runs out of time. To receive a heart, someone must lose everything, and even then, the odds are not in your favor, because surviving the wait is only the beginning. Once the donor heart is inside you, your own body may decide it doesn't want it there. Tissue rejection. The immune system identifying the new heart as a foreign invader and launching an attack against it is not a rare complication. It is almost an expectation. Nearly 2/3 of heart transplant recipients will experience at least one rejection episode within the first year alone. The body that fought so hard to stay alive, now fighting equally hard against the very thing keeping it that way. Some rejections are caught early, managed with medication, survived. Others are not. The battle between a recipient's body and their donor heart can last for years. A slow, silent war being waged inside the chest, while the person tries to rebuild a life, tries to feel grateful, tries to feel normal, tries to feel like themselves. Chapter 3. the ancient truth. Long before science gave us language for what the heart does, long before we understood chambers and valves and electrical impulses, human beings knew something. They felt it. Every major civilization on Earth, independently, without contact with one another, arrived at the same conclusion. The heart is not merely a pump. It is the seat of the soul, the home of identity, the place where a person truly lives. In ancient Egypt, dating back over 4,000 years, the heart was considered so sacred, so essential to the continuation of a person's being, that during the process of mummification, it was the only organ returned to the body. The brain, the organ we now consider the center of everything, was deemed so insignificant it was pulled out through the nose with an iron hook and discarded. The heart remained, because without it, the soul had nowhere to go. The ancient Egyptian word for heart, ib, did not simply mean the physical organ. It meant mind, intelligence, understanding, moral character. It was everything a person was, compressed into a single word, housed in a single organ. Upon death, the heart of the deceased was brought before Osiris, god of the dead, and weighed on a golden scale against the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was light, unburdened by cruelty, by sin, by darkness, the soul passed into the field of reeds, an eternal paradise. But if the heart was heavy, the goddess Ammit waited, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, and she devoured it. Not the body, the heart, because to destroy the heart was to destroy the soul entirely. No afterlife, no continuation, simply nothing. Across the ancient world, others reached the same conclusion by different paths. The Greeks, Aristotle, and Hippocrates placed the soul and the intellect in the heart, not the brain. The heart was the source of heat, of courage and thought itself. The Aztec civilization of ancient Mexico believed each person contained several spiritual forces, and most could leave the body temporarily during dreams or illness and return. But the Teolia, the spiritual force they associated with the heart, could never leave, not even for a moment. If it did, the person died, not from physical failure, from the loss of what made them themselves. These were not primitive misunderstandings. These were observations made by people who paid close attention to what happened when the heart stopped, and what seemed to leave with it. For thousands of years, we dismissed these beliefs as mythology, superstition, the well-meaning errors of people who didn't yet have the tools to know better. And then, in 1991, a scientist named Dr. J. Andrew Armour made a discovery that has quietly unsettled medicine ever since. Chapter 4. The Little Brain. The heart, it turns out, has a brain of its own, not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. Dr. Armour's research identified what is now called the intrinsic cardiac nervous system, a complex, independent neural network embedded within the heart itself, comprising approximately 40,000 neurons. Neurons capable of sensing, of feeling, of learning, of retaining memory. Neurons that share the same biochemical profile as those found in the brain. The heart does not simply receive instructions from the brain and obey them. It processes information independently. It makes decisions. It responds to its environment without waiting for permission from above. Scientists now refer to it, with a mixture of wonder and unease, as the little brain of the heart. And here is where it becomes relevant to something most people have never considered. When a heart is transplanted, the nerve connections between the donor heart and the recipient's brain are severed. They do not reconnect for months, sometimes longer. During that period, the transplanted heart functions in its new host entirely through the capacity of its own intrinsic nervous system, its own little brain, running independently in a stranger's chest. But the heart does not communicate with the brain through nerves alone. It also speaks in chemistry. From the moment the transplanted heart begins beating in its new host, it begins producing and releasing hormones directly into the bloodstream. Hormones that travel to the brain and influence how that person feels, thinks, and behaves. This chemical conversation begins immediately. It does not wait for nerve connections to form. And then there is the electromagnetic field. The heart is the most powerful generator of electromagnetic energy in the human body. Its electrical field is 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical activity produced by the brain. Its magnetic field is more than 100 times stronger than the brain's. It can be detected by sensitive instruments up to 3 feet away from the body in every direction. Research conducted by the HeartMath Institute suggests that this field is not simply a byproduct of cardiac function. It carries information. It changes with emotional states. It interacts with the fields of people in close proximity. When people touch, or even stand near one another, a measurable transference of the electromagnetic energy produced by the heart occurs between them. The heart has been broadcasting itself into the world around it, into every person it has ever been near. The ancient Egyptians, it seems, were not entirely wrong. Chapter 5, Where Love Lives. We have always known, in the way that humans know things before science catches up, that love lives in the heart. Not as a figure of speech, not as a Valentine's Day convenience, as a felt experience, the chest tightening, the heartbeat changing, the physical sensation of emotion that has nothing to do with rational thought and everything to do with that fist-sized organ behind the sternum. And medicine has confirmed something that once sounded like poetry. Broken heart syndrome is real, clinically documented. A condition where severe emotional stresses such as grief, loss, shock, and heartbreak trigger a sudden and potentially fatal weakening of the heart muscle. The heart, responding to emotional devastation, can simply give out. Not from disease, not from physical damage, from feeling too much. If the heart can be broken by emotion, what else is it carrying? The heart doesn't merely respond to love, it produces it. The heart synthesizes and releases oxytocin, the hormone responsible for social bonding, trust, romantic attachment, and the sensation of love itself, directly into the bloodstream. This is not solely a function of the brain. The heart manufactures the chemical of love and sends it coursing through the body. The heart's electromagnetic field, that powerful information-carrying field extending 3 feet beyond the body, becomes most coherent, most organized, most powerful during states of genuine love and compassion. The heart, it appears, is at its most potent when it is feeling, which raises a question that the medical community has struggled to answer cleanly. When you receive someone else's heart, do you receive something of who they loved? The evidence, anecdotal but persistent and documented across decades, suggests that something shifts. Claire Sylvia was a dancer and choreographer when she received a heart and lung transplant in 1988. In the weeks that followed, her romantic preferences shifted in ways she could not explain. She began dreaming repeatedly and vividly of a young man named Tim. She felt she knew him, felt drawn to him. She eventually tracked down her donor's family and discovered that Tim was real. He was her donor. And his personality, his tastes, and his preferences had been finding their way into her waking life. Anne-Marie Switzer stated openly, after her own heart transplant, that she experiences love differently now. Not less, not more. Differently. As though the instrument through which she feels has been retuned. And then there is the account of a donor's wife, who met the man carrying her late husband's heart at a transplant meeting. She almost collapsed. She looked into the recipient's eyes and said that she felt she was trying to ask the recipient how he was feeling, but found herself really asking her husband. The heart that loved someone still seemed to know how. Chapter 6. What comes with it? In 2000, a landmark study found that 89% of all organ transplant recipients reported personality changes following their surgery. Not heart transplant recipients specifically. All organ recipients. Kidney, liver, lung, heart. 89%. The changes varied by organ. Liver recipients reported improved mental clarity. Lung recipients described a new sense of calm. Kidney recipients most commonly reported shifts in food preferences. But across the board, something changed. Something that the recipients themselves could not fully explain through medication, through stress, through the psychological weight of a near-death experience. But it is the heart cases that go furthest, that go deepest, that linger longest. Here is something that stops cardiologists mid-sentence when they first encounter it. When a caterpillar undergoes metamorphosis into a butterfly, the brain of the caterpillar is completely dissolved in the process. It does not survive the transformation. Nothing neurological carries over. And yet, butterflies remember what they were taught as caterpillars. Aversions trained into them before they dissolved, recalled perfectly after they reformed. Georgetown University proved it in 2008 by training caterpillars to fear a specific scent using mild electric shocks. Then, watching as the butterflies they became still flinched from that same smell. The memory survived, with no brain left to store it in. Where is that memory, if not in the brain? Where? The documented cases of heart transplant recipients suggest the heart may have an answer. A 47-year-old man received the heart of a 17-year-old killed in a drive-by shooting. He had never liked classical music. After surgery, he became consumed by it. He began playing it constantly, whistling melodies he had no way of knowing. It was eventually discovered that his donor had been shot while walking to music class and had died on the street still clutching his violin case. In a domino transplant case, a laid-back man named Fred received the heart of an aggressive Type A personality named Jim. Fred began exhibiting Jim's behaviors, his intensity, his manner. During intimate moments with his wife, Fred repeatedly called her by the wrong name, the name of Jim's wife. A 5-year-old boy received the heart of a 3-year-old. At a transplant meeting, before anyone had said a word about the donor, the recipient's mother watched her son walk toward the donor family's table and sit down beside them, as though he knew. These cases are not considered proven by mainstream medicine. They are documented. They are persistent. They span decades and continents, and they have no satisfying conventional explanation. Scientists have proposed that memory may be stored not only in brain synapses, but in DNA, in RNA, in proteins, in epigenetic changes within cells throughout the body. That what we call memory may be far larger than the organ we have always assigned it to. Perhaps the heart does not simply pump blood through the body. Perhaps it carries the person. And for some recipients, that possibility is too disturbing to sit with. Studies have documented what researchers call massive defense and denial reactions in transplant patients asked about personality changes, rapidly changing the subject, dismissing the question as absurd, refusing to engage, as though the idea that something of their donor came with the heart is a threat too fundamental to their sense of self to even consider. Because consider what it means. If the heart carries memory, identity, and emotion, then who exactly is living in that body now? This psychological conflict has a clinical name: identity dissonance. The genuine, documented disruption of a recipient's sense of self. The unsettling feeling that something foreign has taken up residence inside them, that they are no longer entirely themselves, that they are fighting quietly and constantly for ownership of their own inner life. Up to 16% of heart transplant recipients develop full post-traumatic stress disorder following transplantation. Nightmares, emotional shutdown, withdrawal, avoidance. The hallmarks of a mind that has experienced something it cannot process. Most people assume the trauma is the surgery, the near-death, the recovery. Perhaps for some, it is something else entirely. Chapter 7. The question nobody can answer. In 2004, a 14-year-old boy named Andrew Buskol made the news in Woodbury, Minnesota. His community had rallied around him. His classmates raised thousands of dollars for heart research in his honor. He received a successful heart transplant that same year. In 2008, the 11-year-old donor's parents sat in the audience at Andrew's high school graduation, watching a young man live because their child had died. He had been, by all accounts, a teenager the community embraced, a survivor, a story of hope. But in August 2008, Andrew Buskol made the news again. In the early hours of the 6th, he smashed the patio window of a neighbor's home. A man named Jim Fratto, who lived alone, a stranger, chosen, seemingly, at random. Buskol had confided his plan to a friend. He would return through the broken window a day or two later. He would stab the man in the chest or slash his throat, and then he would cut out his heart. That friend called police. When investigators searched Buskol's car, they found a backpack. It contained a swim cap, latex gloves, and shoe coverings. There was a map to Frado's house, a small pry bar, a black mask, gauze, scissors, tweezers, and a scalpel. He had been planning to kill someone and to take their heart. The Washington County attorney described it simply. Very bizarre case. Buskol was referred for psychiatric evaluation. His attorney told the court that his client had received no psychological support whatsoever following his transplant at age 14. The thoughts, he said, his client could not explain where they came from. After his medication was adjusted in custody, within 8 to 10 hours, those thoughts were gone. And that is where the question lives. Was Andrew Buskol always going to become this person? Did the weight of illness, the trauma of surgery, the years of anti-rejection medication quietly reshape something in him that was already fragile? Or did something come with the heart? Nobody can answer that. Not with certainty, not with science. The cellular memory hypothesis has not been proven, but it has not been disproven either. The documented cases exist. The neurons exist. The electromagnetic field exists. The hormones exist. The unchanged memories of butterflies with dissolved brains exist. What the heart truly carries remains one of the few questions that sits at the exact intersection of science, philosophy, and something older than both. Every ancient civilization believed the heart held the soul. Every one of them believed that what lived in the heart could be passed on. Closing. So here is a question, just for you, in the quiet of wherever you are right now. If the choice was yours, if the doctors told you today that without a new heart you had weeks, maybe just days to live, would you take it? Most people would say yes, of course, without hesitation. And the people who made that possible, the donor and their family, in the darkest moment of their lives, choosing to give the most extraordinary gift one can offer, a heart, a lung, a kidney, a liver, the gift of continuation, of breath, of a future, for not one person, but many. They are nothing short of heroes. But you have just learned what science is still trying to understand, what 40,000 neurons remember, what an electromagnetic field carries, what ancient civilizations sensed long before we had the language and the technology to prove it. These are not just replacement parts. What exactly are you saying yes to? Beating sin. I noticed in the waiting room a pattern had appeared, mostly male and over 45. Apparently, I'm special, female and 24. Uncertain now just how long I'll survive. The truth, my heart is broken, and it was born this way. A small genetic fault inherently. Big words that add confusion and ignorance and fear. But sweet abbreviation, ARVC. Back when symptoms started, they called it little jolt. The heart skip feelings I had in my chest. My childhood diagnosis, I too young to understand. All I knew was little jolt could steal my breath. In my teens, my life was different. I couldn't run a lot. Dizzy spells and tiredness all the time. While my friends doing fun things, I had to sit it out. But I believed that it would heal, and I'd be fine. But little jolt's progression has brought me here today, an urgency I cannot overstate. My broken heart exhausted and ready to break down. Time to weigh up options for my fate. The doctor laid it out for me. I haven't got much time. A heart transplant, my only option now. My future is dependent on position in a list, and to attain the rare if luck allow. So patiently I waited, and hoped my name was called, breathing in and out, and trying not to cry. I was wishing for salvation, knowing full well what it meant. In order that I live, someone must die. Months had passed, and by this time I'm struggling for air, and the fluid causing both my legs to swell. I feel as if I'm drowning. Little jolt works over time. If I'll make it through, only time will tell. Then suddenly, a donor, and he's my perfect match. They prep me as his heart is on the way. I take in every feeling as I'm counting back from 10. For a new life for me starts with the new day. The moment I awoke, there was more air in my lungs. My chest was sore, but lighter than the past, and they even had me walking just a few steps every day. After years of illness, I was healing fast. I was grateful to the young man. The heart he gave was strong. No time at all, and doctors sent me home. My little jolt had left me. My affliction disappeared. My rhythm steady as a metronome. My body growing stronger. I could feel it every day. But something unexpected I did find. I experienced some impulse to do not as before, though I suspected all within my mind. After rehabilitation, my progress excellent. Physically, my body healing great. I started feeling urges that I'd never felt before, including one of all-consuming hate. Women in my presence no longer could I stand. It was all that I could do to keep control. I was like a different person. It was taking over me. And I was fighting for my very soul. My thoughts were growing darker and evil to the core, contemplating dark, horrific acts. And though I tried to reason, inside myself I knew, emanating from my new heart was the fact. I fought against it strongly, denying all its whims, until at last my conscience all consumed. No longer could I fight it, this beast inside of me. Finality of my newfound evil loomed. I waited in the shadows as my potential victim passed. She was young, but I knew not so innocent. The revulsion that I had for her washed away my guilt as I began my murderous descent. As I ran towards her with the cold steel in my hand, stealthily approaching at her heel. It was quick and all too easy as my blade had met its mark. What a rush of sheer adrenaline I feel. Carefully, I carry her deeper through the trees so I can camouflage my little mess. My new heart beating wildly, but not because I'm ill, but from excitement for the power I possess. No longer can I quell these inner feelings that I have, perhaps the cause of my affliction from the start. For denying what's inside yourself may poison from within and leave you wasting with a broken heart.